Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 951. My opponent started off with e4 here and went with knight f6, intending to play the Alekhines defense, but he avoided it with knight c3, which you can see is the second choice here. This is an okay way to play. It didn't turn out well for white in this game, but there are reasonable alternatives here. But there's no reason to avoid the Alekhines defense. I think just pushing on with e5 is good for white, and you can later kick the knight again, and you just have a little more space in the center. So I think it leads to a good game for white. But anyway, he chose to defend the pawn. It's a respectable way to play. And now, as I mentioned, you can continue in Alekhines lines with d5, but I never learned this line, so I don't play that. I just play e5, which most often transposes. I mean, there are other moves here, g3, f4. I wonder what f4 is like. But most often this transposes into the four knights game. And now in the four knights game, there are really two main choices. You can play the Spanish four knights with bishop to b5, that's the top choice, or you can play the Scotch four knights with d4. So that's like a Ruy Lopez with the extra knight moves, or a Scotch game with the extra knight moves. And turns out to be interesting play in both cases, although black is fine. So that's why I will transpose into the four knights when given the chance, because black is basically fine in all those lines. And then occasionally white will play bishop c4, which is just a mistake. Black is better after this. So I did the wrong thing here. You take the e-pawn here, of course, and then play the fork. And you get your pawn back. Let's see, couple of things white could try here. If white takes first, just take back, and then he has to grab the pawn, and then you play d5. And it's true he can come in here with the check, but you just tuck your king away here, and you have the bishop pair, and you have more space in the center. So this actually turns out to be good for black. So the way that this should be played here, after, well, he should take, which he did correctly, and then after the fork, the bishop should drop back to d3. That's the normal way of playing, so that if I take the knight, the bishop can take back. Yeah, I'll go ahead and put that on the board. So he should have played bishop d3 here, in which case I can take the knight immediately, or I can even play the move f5. It's kind of an interesting trick, but after this knight moves away, you can push the e-pawn forward and fork those two pieces. So there's still going to be a piece lost there. But simplest is just to take the knight right away, bishop takes, and then develop. And there's a position where black is just a little bit better. I think more center control and equal development. So decent position for black, a slight edge for black. It's sort of like white is given the opening advantage to black by playing this way, which is why it's a mistake. But the move he played is even worse. I didn't actually realize how bad this was until I was looking at it afterwards, because I thought it looked like white was getting some play here, but not really. So I take the knight, and he decided to take the knight right away with check. You can see that's one of the lines. He could have tried this. I was a little bit more worried about this, but it turns out that even here, queen g5 is a good answer. So he can take here, but you can take the bishop. That works out well for you. Or if he plays d4 supporting the knight, then you have the pawn hanging here. So this queen g5 move is the idea that I missed. And that's what makes this all good for black. He took first. I took back. Then he took, and I played queen d5, which is still a move here, but not the best move. Once again, queen g5 is the way to try and punish what white is doing here. You're going to tear up the king side with the queen when he saves the knight one way or another, and that leads to a big advantage to black. So queen d5 that I played actually still keeps an edge for black. You can see we're still in the opening book, but the queen g4 was that Yeah, it was queen g5. That was the bigger advantage. Anyway, he goes knight g4 here. I went bishop a6, which it's funny, that's still in the opening book, but I guess it's a logical move. You just stop your opponent from castling while you have your pieces in the center here, and you just prepare to build up a big attack. And then he went with b3, which is, we're out of the opening book. This opening line continues knight e3. Yeah, I was expecting this move. And then the queen can go over to a5 or drop back to e6. And the game continues from there. Anyway, that's not what happened in the game. He played b3, and we're just out of the opening book, and I still have that slight edge. But I think this position is probably playable for white. Anyway, I went bishop c5 here, just developing. He went bishop b2, and I castled because that was defending this pawn. But actually, the chess engine criticized that castling move. It thought it was a mistake. Not a huge mistake, but it seems to give back some of the advantage that black had. The chess engine wants to play in kind of a crazy tactical way here. Sacking a pawn on e3, just giving that up. Castling queenside, which I briefly thought about it, but just looks wrong with all these holes on the queenside to be castling over there. But you get this immediate pressure on d2 here. So it's a position where white would really like to castle queenside here, move the queen out of the way and castle queenside, but the queen can't move anywhere easily, can't go here, for example, and if it comes out to f3, the queen comes out to f3, then this queen is coming into e2, or d2 there, and that looks deadly. So it's a little difficult for white to unwind here. Let's see, the chess engine gives this line, knight e5, so it doesn't even bother with grabbing another pawn here. It just wants to get back to defend. Let's see. It takes time with black to play the king to b8. And the knight drops back to d3, shielding the d2 pawn from the queen, so that maybe white will eventually have time to castle on the queen side. So then the queen comes here and takes on g2, rook f1, and then another sacrificing here. And the line continues. So you can see it just wants to go all out for the attack while the king is still in the middle. Pretty interesting play, but not something I would be able to discover in a blitz game, and maybe not even in a slow game. But interesting. Anyway, I just castled king side. Let's see, he went knight e3, and I went queen to g5. And here's where white really makes the final mistake. Actually, at this point, it is still a game for white, and the chess engine gives this line, h4. So I don't want to, well, I can't take the pawn right away. The knight's still protecting it. The knight is still protecting the pawn. I don't have time to take the knight off, so I drop the queen back and then play queen g4, the move that was played in the game. But the difference this time is that my queen, if I were to take the knight, which is a way to try and win a pawn here. So this is probably best play. If I take the knight here, leaving his queen hanging, he has time to take my queen. And with my queen pushed back, I don't have the ability to take back with the bishop like happened in the game. So I can throw in this check, give up the bishop with tempo, and get a pawn, and then I could take the queen with check. So I've gained a pawn, but the pawn structure is a bit scattered here. We have opposite colored bishops, and it seems like white can retreat the king either here or here to get away from the check, and white is okay. So white should survive that. So interestingly enough, he almost had the right idea, but he played queen g5 first, and then that just falls to this very typical kind of tactic, but if you haven't seen this, it's a good one to pay attention to. This is a single move that eliminates the defender of the queen, so now the queen is hanging, and at the same time it defends my queen. So this kind of a tactic can arise whenever you have two pieces that are facing each other, and look at how that piece is defended and see if there's a way to remove that defender with tempo, or remove it in a way such that you defend your own piece. And so now when he takes, I take back with the bishop. That's as good a response as any, but I stay a piece up in this line. And, well, let's just walk through the rest of the game. I think he tried to shut down my bishop, but I managed to escape with it. You know, if he could sideline this bishop somehow, sorry, not that one. If he could sideline this bishop somehow, maybe you would have a chance at a playable game, but as it is, I'm just a piece up. Takes the bishop off, and well, he played on for a bit here. Just go ahead and walk through to the end of the game, but there was no doing. Basically, I just have to remove all the material and win the end game. And so he didn't want to play out the rest of the end game. It's a pretty straightforward win with all these pawns on the board. I even have a passed pawn over on the king side, and he's not really going anywhere with these pawns on the queen side. So that's how the game ended. He resigned here. Anyway, interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Bye.